On the sidelines of the G7 summit, Prime Minister Modi is going to be holding bilateral meetings with Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, French President Emmanuel Macron, and UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. And those bilaterals are going to be taking place on Sunday. Now remember, the Prime Minister has over 40 engagements that are planned. These are just a few of them. He's also going to be speaking about a range of topics which include climate change, peace, stability. We're also going to be seeing how the G7 really deals with one of the main issues, which is the war that is taking place after Russia invaded Ukraine last year on February 24th. Now, all eyes are also on what Moscow's response is going to be to the G7. Another particularly significant point of the G7 is that this comes ahead of India hosting the G20 summit later this year. Now, what we're learning about specifically when it comes to the latest breaking input is that the Prime Minister on the sidelines of the G7 summit is going to be holding bilateral meetings with Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, French President Emmanuel Macron, and UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. And these bilaterals are going to be taking place on Sunday. And as we mentioned, the Prime Minister has a very busy schedule ahead of him. He's going to be taking part in over 40 other engagements. Since yesterday, leaders have been trickling in to Hiroshima, Japan, which is where the G7 is taking place. And another aspect of all of the leaders going to Japan and essentially being in Hiroshima is that the Quad, which was earlier scheduled to take place next week in Sydney, that is essentially now going to be taking place on the sidelines of the G7, which is going to be taking place over the next few days. Now we're crossing over to CNN News 18's political editor, Maria Shakil, who's also been tracking all of the developments of the G7 in Hiroshima itself. Maria, we're learning about a few bilaterals that the Prime Minister has planned with Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, French President Emmanuel Macron, and UK's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak.
Yes, that's right. So tomorrow is when the bilaterals will be taking place, along with India's participation at the outreach session of the Quad Summit. Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrives here in some time from now, where he will be welcomed by the Indian diaspora. In terms of the bilaterals, yes, there is a bilateral which was roughly around 5:10 Japan time with French Premier Emmanuel Macron. There is one. Another one with Fumio Kishida, Japanese Prime Minister, and as far as the other bilaterals are concerned, which includes one with the Republic of Korea as well. So having said that, I think in terms of imagery, the Prime Minister, along with other world leaders walking inside the Hiroshima Peace Memorial, will become important because India, remember, is not a signatory of a nuclear non-proliferation treaty, but India has been a responsible nuclear power. The Prime Minister also sending a message through that unveiling of the Gandhi bust, which will be happening roughly around 8:30 a.m. Hiroshima time, which will send a message of peace to the world. Particularly, it's happening in the backdrop of a live conflict between Russia and Ukraine, a war which has been going on for over 450 days now. And there seems to be no solution in sight, as the two sides have only taken a more belligerent position with the bombing and of cities continuing by Russia of Ukraine. So as far as that messaging is concerned, I think the two symbolic visits, particularly inside where the leaders will be interacting with the survivors of the Hiroshima blast, will become important, and also the floral tribute which the leaders will be putting on the Hiroshima Victims Memorial Cenotaph, which has been which will be followed by a group picture of the leaders. That's why I'm saying, in terms of the city which has been chosen by Fumio Kishida for the G7 summit becomes important. G7 summit's presidency is with Japan. Before that, we are being told that various interactions with the foreign ministers and other level meetings were scheduled in other cities. But the state leaders meeting, the top leaders meeting taking place in Hiroshima, Fumio Kishida is trying to send a message that this is what the outcome of a nuclear war is, that he wants to talk about peace in the backdrop of a live war which is happening between Russia and Ukraine. So Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the representative or the head of the world's largest democracy, unveiling the Gandhi bust becomes a very important imagery and a symbol which the Prime Minister himself will be sending tomorrow.
Could you also explain another aspect of this, where essentially what takes place at the G7 is also going to be setting stage for what takes place at the G20?
Yes, because, India has been talking about points of convergences. When foreign ministers met in New Delhi, last month, India has been saying that, whatever may be differences as far as views with regards to the Russia-Ukraine war is concerned, put that on the sidelines. Let's talk about energy. Let's talk about security. Let's talk about supply chain, climate challenges, and on those counts. But because the venue of G7 is Hiroshima, it's unlikely that the leaders will not be talking about Russia's aggression and Russia's role, and particularly Russia repeatedly issuing those threats of nuclear war against Ukraine. So I think because the venue is such, you cannot overlook the running theme or the running imagery which is there. When you move around Hiroshima, you get this you certainly feel that even though the survivors may have moved on, but that almost is like a lurking sense of what happened on 6th of August 1945 and in the subsequent months and years is somewhere around. The survivors are not able to move on. And Fumio Kishida represents Hiroshima. He comes from Hiroshima. And hence he wants to send a message that during his presidency, as the Prime Minister of Japan, and also when Japan is holding the presidency of G7, they would want to send a message of convergences, particularly on disarmament. Can the leaders come to a conclusion of doing away with nuclear stockpiles? Can there be a conclusion or some kind of roadmap that can be drawn? Well, it's a tall ask, certainly, because of the aggression of several countries, which includes China, aggression of North Korea, and also Russia. But India, for it has done so much of a tightrope walk so far. We have challenges, particularly emerging from its geographical position as well. So India understands all that, and that is the reason why this huge symbol of unveiling of the Gandhi bust by Prime Minister Narendra Modi inside the Hiroshima Memorial Peace Park will be a message of India telling to Russia clearly and categorically, this is an era of peace.
All right, Maria, do stay with us. All right, we were just getting visuals of the Prime Minister leaving. Essentially, remember, he's going to be heading to Japan to attend the G7. But, Maria, are you still with us?
Yes.
All right, would you be able to go
when we
over
look at these visuals that are coming in? Yes. So these are the visuals coming in of the Prime Minister departing from New Delhi. He will be arriving in Hiroshima around 8 p.m. Hiroshima time, which will be followed by his welcome by the Indian diaspora at the hotel where he is staying. He'll be here for roughly around 36 hours, Aisha, and thereafter he heads to Papua New Guinea and then to Australia for the